Hi, and welcome to this episode of Let's Talk. This is a TV show that strives to introduce you to some people that live in East Hampton that you might know their names, you might know who they are, but you really don't know a lot about them. And I think all my guests are fascinating people. Today I have Larry Cantwell. Larry grew up in Amaganset as part of the very large Duno family, and he spent his career working for the citizens of East Hampton in a number of different ways. He's held numerous elected positions in town and also spent over 30 years, right? Over 30 years as the administrator of East Hampton Village. You probably know him best as one of those hats that he wore, but you probably don't know a lot of things about him and his growing up years in East Hampton. So let's talk.
I'm ready when you are.
Okay, I have I always ask my guests to send me photos about their life so we have something to talk about. And the first one I have to say is one of my favorites. It's so iconic for any of us that grew up in the 1950s, right? It's this photograph of you in your cowboy outfit. I love it. It's so great. I mean, we all had these. I had Dale Evans' outfit. My brother had Roy Rogers' outfit with the 6-gun and everything. It was the best, right? Cap guns, remember?
I'm sure that was a gift of, I don't know if that's after Christmas or whenever it was, but yeah, I was really happy to be a cowboy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We got ours at Christmas. I remember that because we have a video of Christmas, our film, an old film from Christmas of us with the strapped on. Saturday morning TV. Did you get to watch Saturday morning TV?
Oh, sure. I think we all did.
Yeah.
But they were black and white. Yeah, it was black and white, and the only stations we got were either from Rhode Island or Connecticut or maybe, I don't even think we got as far as Boston. So we had, 2 or 3 channels that we watched?
Right.
Nothing from New York.
Nothing from New York.
We couldn't get the reception.
Connecticut, yeah. Right. It was all New England for sure. But Saturday morning TV was great. It wasn't all cartoons like it became later. It was great TV shows like Hopalong Cassidy and Roy Rogers and Dale Evans and Sky King and
Lone Ranger.
Yes, yeah. Great shows. I really loved that. So tell me about growing up in Amaganset.
Well, I often describe it sometimes, I guess, oddly as having never left your mother's womb. If you think of a mother's womb as a warm and secure place that it is. I mean, when we were growing up, there were no trespassing signs. I mean, you rode your bike wherever you went. You left the house early in the morning in the summer, and off you went on your bicycle to play baseball, or hang out with your friends. And as long as you got home on time, you were okay with your parents. And that's how we grew up. I mean, it was a safe and secure way to grow up. And I pinch myself when I think about growing up here. Of course, I came from a large family, as you said. My mom was born in Italy and was one of the Dunos. So when I was growing up, I had 18 aunts and uncles. We lived on Bunker Hill Road in Amaganset. Right. We were all in the same neighborhood.
Lots of cousins.
Yeah, I must have had 30 or 40 cousins, I guess. And, we grew up as a very close Italian family.
Mm-hmm. And Amaganset was such a great place. I mean, you probably could ride your bike right up into the commercial district, right? Or to school, or...
Oh, yeah, I used to ride my bike to grade school, to Little League practice, up street to meet friends and play baseball or whatever. But we also had, a lot of activity in our area, too, because we had so many cousins. And then, Dennis Curls and Sammy Delapola lived down the street. We'd play sandlot baseball all summer long.
Right.
And it was, it was a wonderful childhood.
Yeah, I think everywhere in the 1950s was kind of a magic time to grow up. The post-war years, there was a great sense of optimism in the country, and I just think everybody thinks of the 50s as kind of a magic time.
Yeah, it was yeah. I mean, and growing up here we were a small community in those days, farming and fishing. My dad was a commercial fisherman. When I was, 7 or 8 years old in the summers, 9, 10, during the summer, every day I'd go with my dad to Montauk and I'd hang out on the docks, and I got to know all the charter boat captains and tourists and others who, I'd hang out on the docks all day long, I'd be fishing and talking to people. I remember you know, later in the afternoon, the boats would come back in after being fishing for the day, and I'd run from boat to boat to see what they caught, and the captains and my dad's friends were took me under their wing and teased me, and occasionally would take me aboard, to fish with them the next day or whatever.
Right.
And it was pretty special.
Yeah. Speaking of baseball, you gave me this photo, which is the Amaganset Little League team, I guess.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Oh boy.
Who else is in there that I might know?
Quentin Aaron and Dennis Curls and Keith McMahon.
Where's Dennis?
Dennis is right here. If you look closely, you'll recognize him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Tommy Lester.
Yeah, that's a great photo.
Sammy Delapola.
Who were your coaches?
That's Bert Ryan up in the right-hand corner. And Mr. Miller. I'm not sure who that is. Yeah, I mean that was sports. Harry Anisco, I see Pat Ryan.
That's great.
Yeah, no, it's all good stuff.
And
good
it's
stuff.
Interestingly, I mean, I grew up at the same time you did, but didn't know you as a child or any of those guys you just mentioned, because I'm not sure people understand how separated we were in our little hamlets in those days. We really didn't know each other until we got to high school, because all the feeder schools, we had our own schools, and then all the feeder schools fed into the high school. And that's when we really got to know everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, Springs. I mean, they were all their own communities. I mean, I got to know kids. I mean, you get to know kids from other neighborhoods through playing Little League or maybe Boy Scouts or whatever the case may be. You got some exposure to them from other places. Right. Sports was a big part of my life.
Right.
It's always been a big part of my life. So. Even in grade school, I'm competing in 7th and 8th grade basketball and baseball. So I got to know Jimmy Nicoletti and Henry Uline from Montauk and other kids from other parts of the town, because we played sports against each other. When we went to high school, then we played on the same team.
Right. Right.
So I got some exposure when I was younger. But you're right. For the most part, the hamlets were unique, and you grew up in a hamlet.
Yeah, you knew everybody in Amaganset.
Yes.
I knew everybody in East Hampton. You knew everybody in Spring. So, yeah, it was an interesting thing to get together in high school and have all these new friends then. I loved that.
And it was a big deal going to high school.
It was a big deal.
Going up to the big school and all these other kids that you didn't know. And, of course,
Yeah, it was great. It was a great time to grow up. There's no question about that. Now, I have 2 pictures that you sent me, and I think this is sort of both indicative of your life.
Yeah. Was
that your first elected office that
I was elected at that point. I think I was a town board member. That's my wife, Ann, my darling wife, Ann, for many years, 46.
She sure looks cute there,
46
too.
years.
Yeah.
And that's at the fair, the Presbyterian Church.
In Amaganset?
No, in East Hampton.
Oh, in East Hampton, okay.
They asked me to come and sit in the dunking booth. I was an elected official.
Right.
I was young. I was in my 20s, I think, at the time. And get dunked. People were happy to grab a softball and try to hit the target and see me get wet. And the thing I always remember about it was, it was in the summer, as you could tell. It was a great fair, local fair in those days. It was a big deal. The water was cold. It came out of the hose. It wasn't warmed up.
Well, it looks to me like Ann's enjoying it as much as
she was having fun at my expense, for sure.
And then what about this one?
That's one of my favorite photos. That's me when I announced my candidacy for town supervisor. Would have been 2014, I guess. And my grandson Avery and my sister Joan. My daughter Laura, Chase, my grandson Chase, Bruce Siska, and I'm not sure who's behind Joan there. But I was so taken that I don't remember who took the photograph, but at the end of my speech, everybody applauded and clapped, and my grandson Avery got all excited. You could see him,
I actually remember that. I was there.
It was very lovely.
But you'd already been in office. I mean, this was the last office that you held. So tell me about what you did up to this point. You were a Bay Constable, right?
Well, it's funny. after high school, I went to college, and so this would have been early '70s, right? And things were changing right here a lot in the '70s. Groupers, the place was kind of getting discovered as a place to vacation or own a second home. I mean, when we were growing up in the '50s, there were summer residents, but they were, there weren't a lot of them. They were
Right.
south of the highway. They'd come, bring their staff for the summer. They'd stay for the whole summer, and then they'd be gone.
Right.
They would come in June. They'd be gone by Labor Day, and you never see
Exactly.
very many visitors again until the
Right.
following Memorial Day, right?
Absolutely.
But in the '70s, that started changing, and so what were we talking about?
Your offices that you held.
Oh yeah. So after college, so as the community was kind of changing, believe it or not, in the '70s, I'm saying to myself, it's being ruined. There's a lot of traffic. This is 1970.
I know.
So,
Yes.
I'm saying I'm gonna go find some place to live, some other place. I want to go exploring. So after college, I come home. I work for the summer, save up enough money, and I kind of travel around with friends. I spent 2 years working in the summer and then traveling for 9 months in the winter, looking for another place to live. And after 2 years of doing that in 1973 or '74, I guess it was, maybe '75, I realized, the light went off and said, you already live in a great place. It's a great community. There's terrific people that and live there. This is where you want to settle down. And I answered an ad in the Star that was written by Eamon McDonough, who was the librarian at the East Hampton High School, who was a Democratic official. And you may remember in the '70s, it's the opposite of what it is now.
They were the minority.
In those days, Democrats were outnumbered 3-1.
Absolutely.
It's the opposite of that now. It's very much a Republican community. And they were looking for candidates, and I was 25 years old. So I answered the ad, the letter to the editor, and I was chosen to run for town Bay Constable, which was an elected office at that time. There were 2 elected Bay Constables. And, you think of the Duno family, and I grew up here, so people kind of knew me. And I was lucky, it was a big upset for me to win that election in 1975, I guess. And I got elected by 100 votes, and that launched me in a career, really, of 42 years of local government and elected office.
Because then you became a councilman.
Then the following year, I was Bay Constable. I love being Bay Constable, by the way. That was a lot of fun.
You have a boat and everything?
I had a boat. It was great. A year later, but it was in the winter, it's kind of boring. I mean, there wasn't a lot to do.
Right.
So the following year, there was a vacancy on the board, and the town board had appointed John Lester to the town board to fill a vacant seat. He was a Republican, of course. And I ran against him and won. And that set me on a career and on a different level. And I served on the board for, I guess, 6 years. And then it was Don Halsey who was at that time, clerk treasurer of the village. And I had gotten married, was settling down a little bit. It's funny because my mom always used to ask me when I was first elected to public office, when are you going to get a real job? When are you going to settle down and get a real job? That's funny how you remember those kinds of things. But there was an opening in the village because Don Halsey was going to retire, and I sent, I either called or sent a letter to Mayor Dayton. Doug Dayton was mayor at the time. Amsley Brooks was on the board. Ted's dad was on the board, and a couple of others. And anyway, I ended up getting appointed to replace Don Halsey, who had been the clerk treasurer in the village for like 30 years. It was kind of that launched me on a 32-year career working for the village, which I always looked on very fondly because I have great memories about working for the village, and the people that I worked with were all terrific people. The village residents care so much about the village that it's a really fun place to work. And I worked for several mayors over time. I remember Doug Dayton being defeated in an election with Ken Westberg, who was mayor for a number of years after that. And Ken was the former leader of the Republican Party. He was the chairman of the Republican Party. And I had worked for Doug for a couple of years, and Ken had been like chairman of the Zoning Board of Appeals, I think. You know, a lot of people were wondering what was going to happen. And Ken Westberg came to me even before the election was held, and he said, look, everyone, you know, he says, I understand that you do a really good job. And, you know, I just want you to know, if I am fortunate enough to get elected, I have no intention of using politics in any way to replace you. You know, in the village, we leave our politics outside the front door, and we all work together for the benefit of the village, which, I mean, you know, for someone to think and say that today is, you know, very unusual. And so, you know, I was reappointed by Ken, and I worked for Ken for a number of years. And, of course, following that, I worked for a number of years for Paul Rickenback, the mayor, and had a terrific career in the village, and then retired from the village after 32 years. And, you know, thought about what I was going to do, and ran for town supervisor, and was lucky to get elected twice, and then finally retired from public office.
Well, you were a great town supervisor. We all miss you.
Well, that's very nice of you to say. I want to say this about all that, which is, you know, I look back on my public service career, political career, whatever you want to call it, and I am extremely grateful. People in this community were really good to me, and I feel that very strongly, very deeply. And you know, they launched me on a career in 1975 that I stayed with, and people continued to support me, and you know, they made me as good as I could be.
Well, there's good reason for that.
I guess.
You deserved it. I mean, you were doing a great job in whatever you did. So, in everything that you did is what I should say. Okay, so tell me about these two pictures. This is more of your
the
career.
one on the right there is my good friend Judge Tukulski, Steve Tukulski, who I spent a lot of time with and got to know really well over the years. And that's my good friend Steve when he was town justice, swearing me in as town supervisor for the first time. So that's a special photograph for me. And then the one on the left is a political event with Senator Gillibrand and me, and then the current town supervisor, Kathy Burke-Gonzalez, and Joe Potter, who was a member of the town board at the time. Kathy and I were elected, when I was elected supervisor, she was elected to the town board, and Joe served with us. And that's a fundraiser or some event somewhere. With Senator Gillibrand. I mean, one of the really interesting things, of course, East Hampton is such a high-profile area.
Yes.
You know, you get to meet a lot of people. People come out to raise money or whatever. So, you know, I got to meet a lot of interesting people. And one of the cool things I got to do once was to play golf with President Bill Clinton.
Oh, that's right. I forgot that.
They still come out even now. For a visit for a few weeks, and that was pretty cool.
Oh, sure, that's an experience.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, there are two more pictures here of some very interesting people that you were able to spend some time with in your role.
Yeah. Well, on the right, that's our governor, Kathy Hochul, and that photograph was taken at Ditch Plains Beach when we received a grant for a water quality project when I was town supervisor that we had applied for. And she was a lieutenant governor at the time, and she came out to, to present the grant to us. And then on the left, of course, that's the First Lady and Senator Hillary Clinton on the left, and that was an event at someone's house in the summer. I remember Len Bernard, a lot of people know Len Bernard. He was a Republican, but he was the controller for the town of East Hampton. When I took over I kept him on because Ken was doing a good job, and maybe that reflects back to the Ken Westberg story where, he was a Republican and I'm a Democrat. A lot of people would assume I would replace him, but I decided, Len was doing a good job. I wanted to keep him. And I took Len's daughter. It's funny because Len's daughter, I'm going to forget her first name, lives on the West Coast, but she was here visiting. And she's a Democrat, even though Len is, of course, a Republican. And I invited her to come with me, and she was all excited, at the opportunity to meet then candidate Hillary Clinton.
That's pretty exciting.
Yeah,
it's nice to get to meet some of those people. Well, now you're retired. So what are you doing now?
The good life.
I have a couple of great pictures here. I think this is both Yankee Stadium.
Oh yeah, very
right?
good. Yeah, those are great. I think a couple of years ago, maybe last year or the year before, we got to take the grandkids into Yankee Stadium to see the Yankees play the Mets. In fact, the Yankees and the Mets are playing tonight.
Oh, are they?
in Yankee Stadium, and we got a tour of Yankee Stadium when we went in. We had arranged for that, and it's one of those great days. You get to spend a whole day with your grandkids, and everybody's doing something they really enjoy.
That's the best.
And it's one of those really special times that we all love to have in our lives.
Right.
Yeah.
I've never been to the new Yankee Stadium. I used to go to the old Yankee Stadium occasionally, and I'm assuming they still call this Monument Park.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And a lot of people don't remember, but I was a Yankee fan when I was a little kid, and there was a time when the monuments in center field were in center field. They were actually in.
Right.
They were inside the park.
It was in play.
Right?
Yeah,
it was
actually
a long
in play.
way out there.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, someone would hit a ball out to the monuments. The ball would bounce around in the monuments.
That's crazy, right?
Yeah.
And the judge's chambers. Now, is that after Aaron Judge? What does that mean?
Yes. They have this little section in right field that they call the judge's chamber, and people can sign up, I guess, to buy seats there, and there's a regular group of people who sit in those seats, who are always, chanting and singing and, getting the crowd all riled up. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah?
Yeah.
How did you get those tickets? You must have a friend who
A
gave you
friend
tickets.
of mine, George Bankston, who grew up here,
Those
now
are
lives in
great
Florida,
tickets.
won a set of 4 tickets to a day at Yankee Stadium.
Nice.
Where they get tickets, and you get a tour, and it's a whole special kind of day. He couldn't use them, and he was nice enough to give them to me, and he wanted me to take the grandkids in, and we had a good day. Yeah.
Those are the people that you like to know, because I remember years ago we got tickets through, a business associate for opening day at Yankee Stadium, and it was a beautiful day. And they were like 4th row up off the dugouts.
Oh,
It
yeah,
was
yeah,
just like
yeah.
the best. And
Do we have a couple minutes? One good story about Yankee Stadium that I can tell you, and I learned as part of the tour. They have this little museum inside the stadium of, a lot of older Yankee stuff. And in the museum is the original locker of Thurman Munson, who, was a great Yankee.
Yes,
died
absolutely,
in a plane
catcher.
crash. And what happened, and that's in the museum. And it's in the museum because when Thurman Munson died, George Steinbrenner, who was the owner of the Yankees at the time, said, no one will touch Thurman Munson's locker ever again. No one will ever use it. This is the old Yankee Stadium. This is after he died. And so they preserved it in the locker room, stayed the way it was. And when the Yankees and the city decided to build a new stadium, they brought his original locker over and put it in the museum, and it's a throwback to whenever that was, the 70s or 80s. And it's really touching if you're a Yankee fan to actually see Thurman Munson's locker.
Oh, yeah. I used to follow them, and I loved Thurman Munson. He was one of my favorite players.
Well, now I'm a big fan of the Washington Nats because James Wood.
Of course, James Wood, sure.
Kenny's son, has made it to the major leagues, and I'm signed up for watch the Washington Nats every night.
Maybe someday he'll be a Yankee. Who knows?
You never know.
You never know. Okay, so you're retired now. Tell me what you're doing. I have 2 pictures here. I'm going to show you the first one.
So that's Alex Walter and I at a member guest championship in Florida, because Ann and I have a little home there, and we remember a golf course, and we play a lot of golf, both Ann and I, and it's a great sport. I really love it. And we won the championship 2 years ago, and that's the photograph of us celebrating the victory.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a 3-day tournament, and it was a lot of fun to win that.
And then I have this picture, which, is that here?
Yes,
East Hampton?
that's off of
Autumn.
probably, that's in the fall, and it's the ocean front along East Hampton. And I think that photograph was taken by David Rushan one evening when we were out there fishing together.
That's a great shot.
It's a beautiful photograph. I mean, that's why I surf cast, for that moment right there when it's just beautiful. The sun's coming up or it's setting, kind of there, maybe one other fisherman, and you're just enjoying life.
Yeah. It's a beautiful time to be out. Early in the morning and at dusk, it's just the best.
Yeah.
On the beaches, I think it's my favorite time on the beach. I know that. Beautiful picture. So when you're in Florida, you're playing golf and you're fishing.
We do a lot of that, and then we have a very good and close friends of ours that own a home in Savannah.
Yeah.
And we used to get up to Savannah for 3 or 4 days, and that's always a lot of fun.
That is a lot of
We
fun.
love the city of Savannah.
Savannah's fun.
And
It's a
we're very
great
fond
city.
of our very close friends, Ted and Barbara Borsak.
All right, so we don't have too much time yet left, but tell me about what is your favorite memory from growing up in Amaganset? What would you say?
Oh boy, that's a really hard one. I would say one of them is my grandmother and grandfather, lived at the end of Bunker Hill Road. And, they had 9 children. So they had, 9 son-in-laws and sister-in-laws and 18, when you add them all up, lots of cousins running around. And my grandmother, Conchetta de Duno, aside from having a 1/4-acre garden that we were assigned to when you're like 8 years old and you'd work with her for the whole summer, that would feed pretty much the whole family and then a lot of other people. She would cook every day for 18 or 20 people, every single day, year-round.
Wow.
And whoever showed up, showed up. I mean, it was, some of her sons or daughters would be there on a regular basis.
For dinner?
Pardon me?
For dinner?
For lunch.
For lunch, okay.
Of course, lunch would last for 2 or
Right.
3 hours.
Right.
And then people in the community sometimes would show up, or I'd bring a friend, or my uncle would bring his buddy, or whatever. I mean, it was every day. Grandma's at lunch, and I'm telling you, it was 18 or 20 people. They wouldn't all show up at the same time, but they'd show up sometime during that 2-hour period.
Yeah, that's
to have
great.
some pasta or some homemade wine or some of her, garden vegetables.
Don't see
It's
anything.
amazing.
Yeah, you don't see anything like
No,
that anymore.
no.
That's like
Yeah.
you're giving me a high bar to shoot for there.
Yeah, no.
Grandma's kitchen. I don't know. I don't think I could do that. Any regrets? Any things you didn't do in public office that you wish you could have done?
There's probably a ton of them. I mean, for all the progress we made over 50 years out here, 50% of the land area is preserved. I mean, the zoning,
Yeah.
so many great things have been done to try to preserve this area. We probably didn't do it. I mean, when you have to drive from here to Southampton, or you get caught in some of these traffic jams, sometimes I say to myself, we didn't do enough.
Right.
As much as we did. And boy, there was blood on the floor. Those are hard battles,
Yeah.
rezoning property and trying
Absolutely.
to preserve as much as we could with great community support. Sometimes I regret that maybe we didn't do enough.
Right.
We probably should have gone further.
I think you do as much as you can, but you just don't know what the future holds, so.
Yeah.
Well, I can't ask you my final question because we're out of time, but I do want to thank you so much for spending some time with me here and talking about your life growing up in Amaganset. And I especially want to thank my sponsor, Marshall and Sterling Insurance of East Hampton, and LTV, which does such a great job of making the community access television possible for all of us on the East End. Thank you so much for joining us, and join us for another edition of Let's Talk.